All right, what's going on, world? What's going on? You gonna try a little something different? I got a reaction video for you. This is titled, We Were Completely Wrong About Why Bugs Are Attracted to Lights. I don't even know why bugs are attracted to lights. Lights. But, yeah. Let's go. Let's see what this man's talking about.
Okay, this is one of those videos. I guess I have to start with a video. In this case, this. Bugs flying around the light. Something that I'm sure most of us are quite familiar with. As a matter of fact, as mentioned in the study we're going to be discussing today, apparently insects being attracted to artificial light was even mentioned in some of the earliest writing in the Roman Empire. So naturally this is something that existed with us for as long as humans were able to produce light. Apparently Romans even used this to trap bugs in order to catch them. But despite the famous expression, drawn like a moth to a flame, and despite this being one of those things we probably don't really think about, what exactly is happening here? And well, we now have an official answer. And it's maybe not a happy answer. It's actually somewhat depressing. At least it didn't really make me particularly happy once the scientists explained the actual mechanism. And so hello wonderful person, this is Anton. Today we're going to discuss a relatively recent study that as always you can find in the description below with a simple title, Why Flying Insects Gather at Artificial Light. Something that was initially started a few years back and something that now has a very good and very official confirmation, with a very obvious answer being no, the insects are not attracted to light at all, even though it obviously appears as they fly around the light. And so let's discuss this unusual phenomenon in a little bit more detail, and I guess talk about what this means for insects in general. And obviously this is not the first time researchers tried to answer this. As a matter of fact, a lot of previous propositions tried to explain this in a lot of different ways. For example, maybe insects were drawn to light through some kind of a escape mechanism. Or basically they saw the light as streaks of sunlight between foliage and were flying toward it in order to escape. This would be some kind of an innate response that seems to be present in a lot of different insects. But this turned out to be not correct. Other suggestions involved the moon. And so maybe in some of the night insects, they often mistaken the artificial light for the light coming from the moon that they might use for navigation. And so they would fly toward it, thinking it's the moon, but it turned out to be some kind of a lamp. But this explanation was a little bit too simple because we don't really see insects flying toward the moon either. Then some researchers proposed that maybe it's the heat. Maybe the insects are just attracted to warmth coming from the light. But this was disproven when similar effects were observed with LED lights, which don't produce enough heat detectable by insects. And lastly, there was a proposition that, well, maybe they're actually blinded by the light and end up being confused flying in strange patterns, basically crashing into the lamp because they just can't see anything. And though these were all, I guess, very reasonable explanations, they just didn't really have enough evidence to prove any of this, especially because there was a lot of counter-evidence. And so in order to uncover exactly what's going on here, the researchers used something brilliant. Okay, they actually just used a light, but on top of this they used an extremely fast camera able to film everything in slow motion. And then they used different lights by placing them in different types of locations and also in different orientations, just to see how various insects, especially moths that are known for this, would react in the process. And one of the first discoveries they made was that, yeah, none of the insects were actually aiming at the light at all. It even appeared as if they were not doing anything special, as if they were just flying straight. And so basically, in their insect brains, they were not reacting to anything, they were just doing their own thing. But what ended up happening was that they were changing directions, unconsciously. Okay, I guess the word unconsciously is maybe not the right word to use because we don't really know if they have consciousness, but you know what I mean. This was an instinctual behavior. They were instinctually changing direction when extremely close to the light. And this was usually done in three separate ways: orbiting behavior, stalling behavior, or sometimes inverting behavior. And all of this depended on the orientation of the light. And this was a giveaway or a very important clue to what's actually happening here. The researchers realized that it was basically their instinctual behavior, sometimes referred to as dorsal light response, something that scientists have been studying for a very long time, and something that we know exists in a lot of different animals. Here's an example from fish. And dorsal light response is a type of an instinct. It's an automatic response that causes insects to change direction depending on the light source. An instinct that evolved to respond to the sun and the moon. And so basically, under normal light conditions, insects automatically turn their back toward the light. In a lot of different flying insects, especially pollinating insects, this is a way to control flight attitude, or basically the control of the angle compared to Earth's horizon in order to conduct accurate flight. And this instinct very likely evolved just to help insects determine where the up and down was, obviously to make flying much easier. And so in other words, they can sense the light with their back, and they're also able to correct their attitude based on the time of the day by sensing the brightest source in the sky. Naturally, this is something that evolved over hundreds of millions of years. And then in the last few thousands of years, they suddenly discovered that sometimes the sun and the moon are not the only sources. Sometimes something else becomes the brightest source, and their instinct kicks in, forcing their poor bodies to reorient themselves toward the light, or basically to reorient their back toward the light. As a result, it starts to appear as if they're orbiting the light source, even though they're not really trying to do this at all. It's their body trying to reassess where the up and down is, constantly, for hours. And they can actually keep doing this for a very long time until something suddenly, accidentally, snaps them out of it. But in their head, or I guess in their tiny brains, they're not doing any of this. They're just trying to fly straight. And they have no idea they're flying in circles or that they're somehow confused, except for the fact that sometimes they bump their heads without really understanding what's going on. And so unfortunately,
Alright, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Okay. I don't even know what I just watched, but I'm assuming that's the conclusion of it. Long story short, this guy has 1.37 million subscribers. Anyway, long story short, these insects have a built-in mechanism. They're programmed, I don't know, maybe by a supreme being to navigate using the light to know which way is up and down. That's all that sums it up. I don't know. I was getting bored. I thought I was about to fall asleep. No disrespect to Anton, but we're gonna leave it at that. Y'all already know what it is. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's get busy. Holla back.